Today we are doing a deep dive into a story that has, well, it's completely divided a community and really captivated the country. We're talking about the double murder case of Sarah Grace Patrick in Carroll County, Georgia. And this whole tragedy hinges on one just agonizing question. Was this 17-year-old girl a cold-blooded manipulator, or was she the ultimate victim of a home life that just finally exploded?
It's really the ultimate narrative of betrayal, isn't it? Sarah Patrick is accused of killing her own mother, Kristen Brock, and her stepfather, James Brock,
While they were sleeping.
while they slept in their own bed, back in February of 2025. And the details of the crime scene itself are just, they're shocking. The bodies were actually discovered by Sarah's 6-year-old sister.
Oh, God.
And it was Sarah who made that distress call to 911.
So at first, the pictures of this grieving, horrified daughter, but then 5 months go by, and in July, the police just do a complete 180.
A complete reversal. Sarah was arrested, and she was charged as an adult with 8 felony counts. And this is where the legal stakes just become terrifyingly high for her.
Okay, let's talk about those charges.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you look at the charges, you see the state is casting a really wide net. She's facing malice murder, which, requires proving premeditation, actual intent to kill.
Right.
And also felony murder. That's where a death occurs during another serious felony, including both of them shows the state is determined to prove one way or another that this was a deliberate act.
And it means they're pushing for the absolute harshest penalty.
Life without parole. Potential life without parole.
Okay, so the legal framework is one thing, but it's the public story around this case that makes it so explosive. Let's unpack that, because the investigation, it seems, relied so heavily on her digital life.
It did.
And that's where you start to see these two wildly different versions of Sarah Patrick come out. It really sets the stage for the whole courtroom battle.
Her social media, it's essentially Exhibit A for the prosecution's argument that she's a manipulator.
Before the murders, what did it look like?
It was pretty standard teenage stuff.
Yeah.
Glamour shots on Instagram, trying to look older than she was, captions like, working on myself, or can't be bothered, that kind of thing.
Okay, but then in the immediate aftermath, it just changes on a dime.
A dramatic shift, mostly on TikTok.
Yeah.
Suddenly her feed becomes this public diary of grief, just extreme vulnerability.
Like what?
Posts asking for prayers, saying she's exhausted, and one really specific, almost heart-wrenching post about her mom saying goodnight to her just before she died.
And this is what's so unprecedented, right? She didn't just grieve online. She actively started reaching out to true crime creators.
Yes, she posted videos specifically asking for them to cover her case.
And that move just poured fuel on the fire. Critics immediately jumped on it.
Oh, absolutely.
They saw it as a performance, a cynical grab for attention, for views, maybe even infamy. I think one source called her a wannabe Sidney Prescott.
Yeah, the classic horror movie survivor. It's a really controversial move, but you have to step back for a second and look at this through like a generational lens.
What do you mean?
It raises this bigger question about how teenagers today process a public crisis. If this had happened 20 years ago, a family member might call the local news.
Sure, or a newspaper.
Right. But for a 17-year-old who grew up watching crimes get solved, or at least discussed, on TikTok, that's her platform. Going to TikTok is how you generate buzz. It's her default.
I get the generational argument, I do, but isn't there a fundamental difference here? Calling the local news is one thing, but posting these continuous emotional videos about your own trauma feels like an act of performance.
It absolutely does.
And doesn't that play right into the prosecution's hands? That she's calculating, that she's manipulative?
It's their entire argument. They'll argue that either her motive was tied to all this drama, or that the social media posts just prove her complete lack of empathy. That she was already building her online brand while, allegedly hiding this horrible secret.
Which brings us right to the motive.
Exactly, the motive battlefield.
Because the defense sees this coming. They know the prosecution is building this narrative of a deceptive teenager, and they are trying desperately to shut down another major piece of it.
They filed what's called a motion in litigation. It's a request to exclude evidence before a trial even starts.
And what do they want to exclude?
Everything. They want to exclude all comments, videos, testimony, anything related to her alleged sexual behavior or promiscuity, and her illicit drug use or hiding of drugs.
So why fight so hard to keep that stuff out? It's not directly tied to the physical act of murder.
Because that information is pure poison to a jury. Even though motive isn't technically something the state has to prove for malice murder, a jury is going to demand a story. They want to know why a teenage girl would kill her parents.
So the prosecution needs a conflict big enough to spill over into murder.
Precisely. If they can show there were constant, escalating fights over her sex life, over drugs, over her just rebelling, it helps them build a case that the tension in that house was at a boiling point.
So their story is basically, she was living a secret life, they fought about it constantly, and she just eliminated the obstacle.
That's the narrative. And the defense knows if a jury starts to dislike Sarah's character, they're way more likely to believe she's capable of this. They need the jury focused only on the physical evidence, not on her personal morality.
And this is where the defense has its own powerful counter-argument. They can completely pivot the conversation from her alleged lifestyle to the just incredibly volatile home she grew up in.
Yes. They're going to paint her not as a manipulator, but as a traumatized victim of chronic chaos.
And the background of that home, it was rough for years.
Tumultuous is an understatement. Sources say Sarah's parents had divorced, and the home with her mother and stepfather was just highly, highly volatile. She'd even tried to get out years before, begging a court to let her live with her biological father.
And this wasn't just, a teenager being dramatic. There's a history of police involvement going back years. We know she told police when she was only 11 years old that she felt unsafe in that home.
11. That establishes a clear, long-term pattern of fear and distress.
And the things she saw were extreme.
Very extreme. She allegedly witnessed her mother try to run over her stepfather with a car, the same man she later married.
That signals an environment where that level of violence and chaos was just normal.
Right. And then you have these unconfirmed reports, but they're out there, about severe substance abuse by the parents, which would just add to this atmosphere of total instability, maybe even neglect.
So the defense has a powerful picture to paint, that this was a teenager who was a product of years and years of trauma, not some cold-blooded sociopath who just woke up one day and decided to commit murder.
And she has a very vocal support network making that exact case.
The family is totally split.
Fragmented, yes.
Yeah.
On Sarah's side, you have her biological father, Daniel Patrick, who is strongly defending her. He calls her a typical 17-year-old, says she would never do this. He's trying to normalize her.
And he's also planting seeds of doubt about the physical evidence, right?
He is. He publicly questioned whether a 100-pound girl could even accurately fire a 9mm pistol. It's a smart move, designed to make the jury question her physical ability to have pulled the trigger.
Then you have her maternal grandfather. This is the father of the victim, her mother, and he's convinced she's innocent.
Dennis Nolan, yes. He's publicly said an investigator told him she was arrested simply because, quote, she's the only one who could have done it.
Which suggests the case might be circumstantial.
It suggests they're relying on opportunity, not necessarily a smoking gun.
So that all leads us to this big, unexpected delay in the trial. The state has been saying for months they have mountains of evidence. The trial was supposed to start in January 2026. Now it's pushed all the way to August 3rd. That's a huge gap.
It's a significant delay. And look, the state has been processing evidence. That 5-month gap between the crime and the arrest, that was used for a ton of lab work. Private labs, the GBI crime lab.
But for all those mountains, we haven't seen public confirmation of the key things, have we?
Not in the court motions, no. The things you'd expect to see, like the murder weapon being found, definitive DNA links, or crucially, gunshot residue GSR on Sarah's hands. The prosecution keeps pointing to digital evidence, but without that hard forensic proof, the defense's doubt campaign stays pretty strong.
But the real reason for the delay is this curveball the defense threw.
A total curveball. They hired a neuropsychologist, a Dr. Robert Schaefer, to do a mental evaluation. The state basically had to hit pause to review his report and decide if they needed their own expert to counter it.
Okay, so explain that. What does a neuropsychologist do that's different from, say, a regular psychiatrist?
It's a really profound strategic move. A neuropsychologist does more than just diagnose anxiety or depression. They evaluate the actual connection between a person's brain, their health history, their trauma, and how that affects their cognitive abilities, their judgment, their insight. They're looking for context, for intent.
So how does that apply to a 17-year-old on trial for murder, especially one with all this documented trauma in her past?
For a teenage brain, which is still developing, they're going to be looking at the cumulative effect of all those years of extreme instability. A neuropsychologist can evaluate things like a breakdown in executive function, trauma-induced dissociation, and how a teenager processes an intense event, And crucially, this is the perfect way to provide an alternative explanation for her bizarre behavior afterwards.
It's a social media activity.
So social media activity.
So the prosecution says the TikToks are proof of a cold, calculating manipulator.
But the neuropsychologist can come in and argue that no, that behavior is a chaotic, dissociative, trauma-informed response. It's a breakdown in judgment caused by years of abuse, not cold-blooded malice.
Wow. It completely reframes the entire narrative.
It does. The defense is signaling a major shift here. They're moving away from just someone else did it to a mitigation defense. They're preparing to argue that even if Sarah Patrick pulled the trigger, and they're not admitting she did, it wasn't an act of malice.
It was an act of desperation.
Or self-protection, or just a tragic reaction from a mind broken by years of chaos.
It makes that malice murder charge so much harder to prove. It shifts the whole conversation from who did it to the defendant's state of mind when it was done.
And that's an incredibly powerful tactic. When that jury is finally seated in August, they're going to be asked to judge which version of Sarah Grace Patrick they believe.
Is she the dangerous sociopath trying to weaponize her past and social media for fame?
Or is she the tragic product of years of instability, who finally just cracked under the pressure of a life she'd been trying to escape for years?
So we're left with this teenage girl caught between a secret life and this incredibly turbulent home, and now she's accused of the ultimate betrayal. The prosecution sees manipulation. The defense sees trauma.
And the jury will have to untangle those two threads. They'll have to reconcile the girl who allegedly lived in this terrifying home with the girl whose online persona seemed so detached, maybe even cynical in the face of it all.
So as you think about this case, just consider that defense motion to exclude the details about her alleged behavior. Even if none of that is direct legal evidence of murder, this case forces you to ask, in a modern courtroom, does the mere perception of a young person's character, driven almost entirely by their online life, become the most damning evidence of all? Does it overshadow everything else? That's the battle that's going to define this verdict.